Alright, so it's late, and I've been sick recently, and it's finals week, but I've been drinking some hot chocolate, and I've even added some little marshmallows, because that makes me feel better. Anyway, James Bond, the 24th movie, just got announced with the title of Spectre, and will of course star Daniel Craig as James Bond in his fourth portrayal, and Christoph Waltz will be the main villain of the film. Now, that's a great thing, because the last movie was Skyfall in 2012, and that marked a turning point in the franchise. It was a little bit darker, and answered some awkward questions that we normally don't see in the Bond film. The reason Eon Productions could even make Skyfall, though, was because of a decision they made way back in 2005, when it was decided that Daniel Craig would be the new James Bond actor. They decided to reboot the James Bond series with a modern take on Ian Fleming's first novel, Casino Royale, that he wrote in 1953. Casino Royale, of course, was released in 2006 and took fans completely by surprise with the huge amount of realism in the movie. The last Bond film in 2002, Die Another Day, was universally criticized for its use of CGI special effects and the large amount of product placement in the film. This was not the case for Casino Royale. I mean, just look at all the running that Bond does in this film. My point is, this was a huge moment for the James Bond franchise, and it worked immensely well. But why did it work so well? Well, I think it's because of a genre from a long time ago called melodrama. We normally don't see it today, but I think a few of the elements from that genre worked into Casino Royale really helped out the James Bond franchise evolve into the common modern action drama that we see today. So, here's what makes a melodrama. Sex. Well, every James Bond film has that in it. Good versus evil. That is literally the point of every Bond film ever. Secrets, lies, betrayals, revelations. This twist happens later in the movie when it's revealed that Mathis has been working with Le Chiffre all along. Too late! Or just in time. This element is in like every movie ever, and Casino Royale has several in it. The main one that I'm going to focus on, though, is when Bond is poisoned during the car game, and he has to get to his car to restart his heart with a defibrillator. The problem is, before he can push the button, the cord comes out. He's too late in saving himself. Now the real twist happens, of course, when Vesper comes and saves him just in time. Longing for innocence or contentment. By the end of the film, Bond actually confesses his love to Vesper and even resigns from MI6, just to travel the world and spend the rest of his life with her. This is particularly shocking to longtime fans because Bond just does not do this. His life is his work. He is a spy. He is 007. But nevertheless, Bond longs for an innocent, normal life. Suffering and self-sacrifice. This actually comes from Vesper in the film when she sacrifices herself to lead Bond to the new set of bad guys that we see in Quantum of Solace, the next James Bond movie. Now, by self-sacrifice, I mean she knows she's gonna die by leading Bond to these guys. And then we actually get the suffering from James Bond after she dies. So both of them play a role in this. A moral lesson. As always in a Bond film, a lesson comes from the end, but unlike most moral lessons that are for the audience, this is actually for Bond himself, and that is, don't trust anyone. And we see this play out in the next set of films. The first thing we need to discuss, of course, is the obvious good versus evil. MI6, the British Secret Service agency, and its 00 agents are the good. They look to counter terrorist threats or world safety by sending in their agents to take them out. The bad, of course, is anyone who James Bond is facing, or anyone who poses a threat, and you get the gist. Side note, the new James Bond movie Spectre could be referring to, of course, the first few movies of the James Bond franchise in which Sean Connery as James Bond looked to take out different bad guys such as Dr. No, the first James Bond film, and he was part of an organization called Spectre, so guess we'll have to wait and see what that means. In Casino Royale, James Bond looks to take down Le Chiffre. Le Chiffre is a terrorist financier who invests his clients' money, such as terrorist organizations or corrupt governments, into stocks, and then he short sells them, and then orchestrates a terrorist attack on them, dropping that stock price and making him look like a genius and getting twice as much money because of it. Le Chiffre and his henchmen are, of course, the bad guys in this film. The main secret of this movie is that of Mathis, who joins Bond on his quest upon his arrival in Casino Royale. Now, Mathis proves his trustworthiness by doing several things for Bond, such as hiding dead bodies or giving him tips on Le Chiffre's whereabouts, plans and abilities. His turn actually isn't all that obvious. There's really no clues for you as the audience to figure it out. Bond doesn't even realize it until Vesper leaves to help Mathis after the whole card game is over. Heck, Mathis didn't even know that Bond knows until after Bond is in the hospital and recovering and has him arrested. There are so many examples in this film of too late or just in time that I'm going to stick to the one I mentioned earlier, the poison scene. Bond is playing cards and is offered a drink by the bartender, which, unbeknownst to him, was poisoned by Le Chiffre's girlfriend. Now, of course, Bond is struggling and eventually he gets to his car and hooks himself up to the med kit inside. MI6 staff walks him through injecting himself with medicine and hooking up the defibrillators to his chest. It's at this point that his heart is slowed down enough that he needs to reset his heart. Unfortunately, during the time of injecting medicine into himself, the power cord came undone and Bond is too late in restarting his heart. As we see all the despaired faces of the MI6 staff and M herself, it's then that we cut to Vesper arriving to the car, connecting the power cord, and pushing the button, activating the defibrillator, and saving Bond just in time. The longing of innocence in this movie comes from Bond himself, and it's a little bit different here because each actor who plays James Bond brings a little bit of a twist to the character that is in each their own. Daniel Craig has the appearance of a vulnerable Bond, and not in a bad way, a way that we as the audience can see deep into his life and understand him even more. Character development, if you will. This James Bond answers tough questions about himself and things that we as the audience think about in our own way. Casino Royale brings this side of Bond near the end of the movie when Bond confesses his love to Vesper. Just listen to this.
Does everyone have a towel?
Yes. Everyone. Everyone except you. I wonder if that's why I love you.
You love me?
Enough to quit and float around the world with you until one of us has to find an honest job. But I think that's going to have to be you because I've no idea what an honest job is.
You're serious?
Like you said, you do what I do for too long, and there won't be any soul left to salvage. I'm leaving with what little I have left. Is that enough for you?
This is the first time James Bond has willingly left MI6, his job, and the life he only knows, for something completely unknown to him, an innocent life. This new set of Bond leads to a second betrayal by Vesper when she stole the winning poker money and ran off to a new set of bad guys that we see in Quantum of Solace. She leaves a trail for Bond to follow, knowing full well that the bad guys would kill her upon his arrival. While this suicide mission may seem like a typical Hollywood twist, it isn't. It's melodramatic because what's more melodramatic than giving up your life, giving up a life of love from James Bond? This death in turn leads to the suffering of Bond, and the last melodramatic element of this film, a moral lesson. While a moral lesson is usually for the audience only, this lesson plays a huge part in the rest of the following James Bond films.
You don't trust anyone, do you, James?
No.
Then you've learnt your lesson.
With James Bond no longer trusting anyone, we see him in Quantum of Solace and Skyfall go off on his own more often, completely disregarding orders from M and MI6 constantly. Now sure, James Bond has always been a lone wolf in his missions, the very nature of the job requires it, but not listening to M, that's kind of pushing it. But that makes the next movies melodramatic as well. So to review, Casino Royale has evolved the melodrama genre because of some elements that we include into action movies today. Good versus evil is a staple of every James Bond film, including Casino Royale. Secrets, lies, and betrayals are in every James Bond film, but in Casino Royale it's mainly from Mathis, who helps Bond the entire time and then betrays him near the end, getting him caught, captured, and beat up before finally being arrested. It also comes from Vesper, who steals the money and leads Bond on another case that takes us to Quantum of Solace. Being too late or just in time is in every movie, but in James Bond the big one comes with the poison scene, when James Bond is too late in saving himself from the poison, but Vesper saves him just in time from dying. Bond longing for innocence is another melodramatic element that we see in Casino Royale. His confession of love and willingness to resign for MI6 to travel the world with Vesper is shocking to longtime fans because James Bond just doesn't do that. Self-sacrifice and suffering is at the end of the film when Vesper leads Bond to the new set of bad guys, knowing full well that she will die because of it. The suffering on the part of James Bond after her death leads to the moral lesson of him not trusting anybody, which plays a part in the following films. While James Bond isn't a 100% melodrama, it contains many elements that are cleverly included into the film to keep you on the edge of your seat and wondering what twist or turn will come next. These elements have helped evolve the action drama genre as we know and love today, and have made Casino Royale a successful reboot of the James Bond franchise. These elements continue to play a part in the recent James Bond films, and will certainly play a role in Spectre as well.
The name's Bond. James Bond.